Awesome. So, I think a really common use of an icon is to kind of communicate different categories of things. And obviously in landscape architecture, one common category is like nature or pollinator, or garden, or like green. And that's often represented with a leaf. And the leaf as an icon is great, although it's very nondescript. As landscape architects, we're often designing for a very specific site in a very specific region. And our diagrams can go so much further if we represent that site or region. And we can often connect to communities a lot easier that way as well. So for this technical lesson, we're going to find our own leaf and we're going to make it into an icon. And so I'm going to pick, I think my favorite, one of my favorite plants from Oregon, the Oregon white oak, and you all can pick whichever plant you would like. The less detail in the leaf, the easier if you're new to starting off on Illustrator. So I could pick like a picture, but this here pops out immediately as a nice flat leaf, minimal background, and the shape of this leaf is very iconic for the Oregon white oak. So I'm gonna save that image to my LA 451 folder. Awesome. And then we're gonna open up Illustrator and we're gonna use Illustrator for the rest of this technical lesson. In Illustrator, we'll open up the cheat sheet, which I found is a nice way of being able to see all the keyboard shortcuts if you don't have two monitors. I highly recommend getting a second monitor. It makes you twice as efficient because you don't have to jump around different screens. I used to have one, but since I moved, I had to unfortunately get rid of my monitor, but I highly recommend it. So we're going to create a little bit of a little template for ourselves. So generally, at least our InDesign folders, we work in the tabloid, which is 11 by 17 inches. So here we can kind of change the height and the width, and this is at 11 by 17, so that's perfect, and it's oriented horizontal. So we're going to create that artboard. And while that's creating, we're going to open up Bridge. So here in my Bridge, in my LA 451, 551 folder is week 2. And I have 2 different images I'm going to add into my Illustrator file. So the first one is the week 2 Illustrator cheat sheet. So I'm going to drop that in, put that down in the bottom corner. And I'm going to rename this layer cheat sheet. Organization is annoying to do up front, but in the end, the long run, it makes you so much more efficient and it saves you so much trouble. I'm going to go back to Bridge and find the white oak leaf and drop that in. Kind of put that in the center there. Sweet. All right, so we have 2 different layers open right now. One is for our image that we're going to be tracing over, and then the other one is for our cheat sheet. So what we should do first is, as you can see, our different layers are colored, different colors according to which layer they're in. But what we want to do first is lock our layers so that as we're moving around our board, we do not accidentally move things. So we do that by clicking Control and 2, and that locks our layers. So I'm gonna make this white oak leaf a little bit bigger so it's easier to trace. And Illustrator doesn't scale things vertically, so you can stretch and distort your image. In order to not distort your image and scale things, you can click Shift and select your the edge of your image and adjust from there. So I have this a little bit bigger. I'm going to select it and do Control 2 to lock my image. So now all our layers are locked. And I'm going to add one more layer. And this one is going to be for our icon. Sweet. So this is going to be our working layer here. And you can tell if you're in the right icon or right layer when you can see kind of the highlight of my line is green, which is the corresponding color for my layer. So I'm working within my correct layer at the moment. So it's really easy to click around our windows and find our tools from there. But with just a little bit of work, using the hotkeys will help you so much and save you so much time. So we're going to practice using the hotkeys. I'm sure there's some of you that could probably create this icon really quickly. You might already be on your way in doing it, but this is sort of like learning an instrument in the correct way. Like we're going to take our time and use our hotkeys so that we can have practice becoming familiar with them. So we're going to mostly use the pen tool. But before we use our pen tool, we're going to want to zoom in to a good starting point on our leaf. I feel drawn towards this end of the stem here. So in order to zoom, you push Alt and you can then scroll, which allows you to move in and out. And then if you press space, you can move and then click and drag. You can move around kind of your view shed on your artboard. So we're going to zoom in. And before we start working on that leaf, we want to unlock it and just change the opacity really quick because it'll be a lot easier to see our line work when our leaf is just a little bit opaque. So we can go up to our layers. Here's the unlock button. We can select our oak leaf and change the opacity. So I'll change it to 60, select the image again, and then I'm going to lock it. So to access the pen tool, we will press P, and you can see that your cursor will change to the pen tool. And something I'm noticing in the left here is that we have a fill in our pen tool. And so I'm just going to go into the fill and make that translucent so that we can kind of see where the line is a little bit easier. Okay. So you can see I'm already breaking some of the rules and clicking on these buttons, and it's because it's a habit, but we're going to break that habit together. So I'm going to press P for the pen tool and start outlining the leaf. But you'll notice that with the pen tool, it's very angular. And so there's actually a way to fix that, and that's by when you put down an anchor point, clicking and dragging, and you create these anchors here that change the curvature of your line. And they can be a little hard to figure out at first, but as you become they become a little bit more intuitive to you, they can help you create some really nice lines. So we're going to continue using the Alt and scroll to zoom, and then Alt or the space and click and drag to move. And we'll just keep putting down anchors and adjusting our line curvature so it fits pretty well with the leaf. So I hit kind of a hard point here that I can get around. But if I were to need it to be a sharp point, what I can do is press Enter and then click back onto our last point of our line, and that will become a sharp line. If I want to undo that, I just press Control Z and it can undo. And we can just keep on going. And these don't have to be perfect because there's we are able to change it a little bit later and keep going. So this feels, when you start using all your like hands, it's supposed to feel a little bit like Rhino. And I think that's something that is a good kind of baseline to think of this program while you're using it, is you want to be as dexterous in Illustrator as you'll end up being in Rhino. So if you end up making a point that you don't like here, let's see, you can, while you click and hold, if you press space, you can adjust where that final point goes in order to create your line and keep it going. You can do that again. And adjust there as needed. So these anchor points, that the lines that you see coming off of them, they kind of go in the direction and at the scale in which you pull them. So you can get really wild with them if you have really extreme curves on your leaf. But the more control that you can have over them, the better. And if you miss a point and you don't have that curve on it, I can show you, I'll make a couple angular ones that we can adjust that later. We're almost there. I'll go a little bit faster. Control Z if you make a mistake. Sweet, and then there's the end. So for the stem, what we can do again is press Enter. That kind of stops that curve. Click back at that endpoint. We can finally connect the whole piece. So you want your shape to be completely closed off. And because if you don't, when you fill it, it can create some weird the fill can kind of act a little bit weird. And so this keeps everything nice and clean and under control. So you can see, like, even without doing some of the curves in certain places, the line work is pretty good and pretty not noticeable, especially if we just select as a test. We can copy and paste. Just put this in the corner here. We scale this down. The further you scale down, the less apparent that that messy line work is. And then if down here, we can just click this little swap tool, which changes the stroke in the fill. It kind of flip-flops them. So we can fill in our oak leaf and see it sort of more of a icon. So we have a few different places that we need to kind of clean up a little bit. And so in order to do that, we can press a couple or use a couple different tools. One of those tools is the selection tool, which is A. When you use the selection tool and you select your line, it allows you to select any of the anchor points that are making up your line and adjust them as you need. And then another great tool is the Control C, which you can use, or sorry, Shift C, which you can use as well to adjust not only the points, but then the curvature of those points. And so those places where I had some curvature that was a little off, I can select those control points using Shift C and reset them a bit and just clean them up. One of the wonderful parts of using the Illustrator is that people can often zoom in really far into your icons. And so although like the 10-foot rule still applies, which is just, if you do the squint test or you walk 10 feet from your diagram, like, is it noticeable? Maybe more like the 3 feet rule. There's still an opportunity of people zooming in and seeing certain inconsistencies with your line work or whatnot. Oops. So we can flip-flop this and just take a look at it. It's looking pretty good. I might fix just this one spot in the bottom right corner. So Alt and scroll. I'm going to see there's no point there. So what we could do if we wanted, so we have two options. We can do the Shift C and see if there's any curvature or make some curvature points to kind of fill in the spot. Should switch this back to line work. But another thing we could also do, so I'm going to Control Z just to bring it back to what it was before, is go back to the pen tool by pressing P, and we can actually add anchor points in this line that we can then, if we press A, which is the selection tool, move and adjust as needed. So that allows us to kind of fine tune things. If we just jump between the selection tool and the curvature tool, we can get these icons looking really nice and clean. So we have our first icon, which you can see here. So what we should do now is we should export this, and then we're going to bring it into InDesign, and then we're going to sort of have like iterations, so like 2 different attempts at making an icon. First iteration is just getting the form of the leaf, and then the second iteration will be trying to add some sort of detail. So to unlock everything, we press Control, Alt, Control 2, and we lock everything on the spread. Let's see, the selection tool, should have written that one down. And we don't need this little icon anymore. We can select our cheat sheet and press Control 3 to hide it. And we have our, we working this in the wrong layer. So if you're working on something in a different layer, you can just select it and drag it into a different layer. Let's see it. Sweet, there we go. So I'm just gonna take that away. I could press doing Control 3 for the image of the leaf, and just go back to our layer icon here, and just get our leaf shape up. So to export, there's a couple different ways, and I find one specific way is just great at retaining the quality of PNGs. If someone knows a better way, please let me know. But I go to File, Export, and Export As. So PNGs as a file type, that allows you to have transparent backgrounds. And so because this is an icon, oftentimes icons are overlaid onto something else. We would like to have a transparent background. So I'm going to save this. And if we press Use Artboard, the Illustrator will export to the constraints of the entire artboard. But if we don't select that, it'll crop the export to our leaf or to whatever we have on our artboard. We'll retain the Use Artboard because this artboard is at 11 by 17, which is the same size as our InDesign artboard. So we'll export that. You can see here transparent background, but it does give you the option to adjust your background colors. And for this right now, we just will keep things at medium resolution and press export. What we should have done when we first started is Control Shift Save or Control Shift S to save this template. So we'll just do oak leaf. Okay. Okay. So we're going to just quick jump into InDesign and set up our workspace for our assignment, for assignment 2. While this is opening up, you may have noticed that I put my last name on my icons when I exported them. And the reason for that is because where I fall, or as for my career as a designer, I would like all my work to be found and be visible to the world. And there's this thing that Google uses called a SSO that kind of connects file names to things you can look up. So if I look up my name, you can see that all the images that I have exported and named with my name will show up if I look up my name. And so there's different ways you can change the file naming, but that's just one little trick to get a little bit of exposure. All right, so we opened up InDesign. We're going to make ourselves a little assignment template. We're going to work in inches. And we're already at 11 by 17. And we're often facing pages is checked. We want to have that unchecked. We'll make 3 pages. because we're going to have 2 icons for our assignment, and then we'll have our title page. And while that loads, we're going to go to Canvas and just double check the standard for the file naming, or the file naming convention for our assignments. So this is what we'd like on the first page. Okay. So here's our first page. The first thing we'll do is go to this properties, import file. We're going to open up the InDesign hotkey cheat sheet. Just put that up for a second. And actually, I just skipped a step. So we're going to delete the hotkey cheat sheet. And in pages, you'll notice that all 3 of our pages have a little letter label. And this letter label is A, the A parent, which is really like InDesign's way of saying that you have a certain specific template that's labeled A for each of these pages. So you can really make your life easier if you adjust your templates before you start working on a document. And so that's what we'll do here as a practice, and hopefully this can be helpful in the future. So we're going to have our title page, which is going to be different from our pages that include our icons. And we have the potential of making this template a template that we don't just use for assignment 2, but we use for all future assignments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click, create a new parent. It'll automatically suggest the prefix B, and we'll keep that. The orientation is correct and the sizes look good. So I'll say OK. So now we have 2 different templates that we can apply to our different pages within our document. So I'll keep A for the first page, and then all you have to do to assign pages or assign templates to the other pages is by clicking and dragging to your pages. So now page 2 and 3 have their own template. And now we'll go in and we'll edit those templates so that we kind of have empty boxes for every assignment in the future that we can just input our work into. So first we'll go to our title page, which is the template is called A parent. And if we double click A parent and come back into our workspace, we'll actually be working on it. And you'll know that you're working on the A parent because you can look down here and you'll see that workspace is selected. So for the title page, we ask for some information to be shown. So I'm just going to so I copied that from Canvas and I'll paste that in here. I'll move it up into this corner, which is always nice. And I don't know if we'll have time to get into a fonts talk, but I really want to. Okay, so we'll just quick change this. And then the due date is in 2 days. Okay. So that looks good for the front page. And let's see if we can go down here, go to our B page. And so now we're working within the B parent, which is the template that's going to be applied to our page 2 and 3. So there's 2 things that we're going to want to kind of set up here, and we can do one optional. First, we're going to go to the properties panel, import a file, in this file. It's just going to be our cheat sheet. And then this will allow us to use hotkeys for the rest of this assignment in InDesign. And last thing we're going to add is the canvas, or the frame, sorry. So the frame tool you can open by clicking F. And what the frame does is it creates a viewport that any image can then be inputted into. So a lot of times if you're working on a really big presentation where all the formatting is exactly the same, but all the images are different, you can set up this template in order to maximize your efficiency and keep a consistent layout in the future. So we create our frame, and we're noticing that that text is looking a little weird. So we can actually shift between the quality or the display quality of our work by clicking Control, Alt, and H to make high quality. And now suddenly the fonts are all looking nice, but that can often lag the computer out. So to go back, we can do Control, Alt, Z, and that will bring us back to our typical display mode. So so now we have those two things set up. Something that's really nice to have in addition to this is just especially when you're working, like when you're making a portfolio and you don't know how tech savvy the people you're applying to are, is just making sure your name is on every page. So we're going to press T for the type tool. We'll just put our name down in the bottom corner. And I'm going to, yeah, that's perfect actually. We can adjust that actually by clicking the selection tool, which is also known as V, and moving the name off to the side, and it's slightly aligned here. Awesome. So we've set up our templates, and now we can kind of go and input our image. So open up our pages, and there's two ways around this, but I think this way kind of makes some sense. We can go straight to our title page here, and you can see that the template has applied the title here, and it's also included the information that we added on the V templates on our pages 2 and 3. So it's important to know about this kind of template we've set up is that you can actually break it. So what we can do is press, let's just go back here to double check. Yep, Control, Shift, and click. And that allows you to sort of break through the template. And for example, if you use this as a template for next week, you can break it and you can just change the date and your assignment title, and then you don't have to type out or remake a title every time. So that just can make things move a little bit faster for you. So press V to go back to the selection tool. No, escape V. So we're going to break that frame again, or break the template to go to the frame. And then we're going to press Control D. And that is allows you to place images into the frame. So it opened immediately up to my LA 451 folder where you can see the oak leaf icon. If I just double click that, it'll put the oak leaf in. And just to make sure that the oak leaf is at the quality that I would like it to be, I'm going to just press Control Alt H. There we go. It looks really clean and crisp. So now we can go and add our final part of the assignment, which will just be some flourishments. So we're going to go back to Adobe Illustrator. So it's always nice to have copies of things. You don't want to accidentally ruin something and not be able to go back. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to copy this icon, select my new layer, and do Control Shift Alt V, which will then paste the icon into place. So now I have copied my icon from the previous layer and then pasted it into the new layer, but it's in exactly the same location. We're gonna go into our layers and just turn on that cheat sheet again and Control 2 to lock it. So when I was looking at noun project, the noun project leaves, let's look again. I noticed a detail that I felt was like fairly easy to add, but it would also kind of bring the leaf to another level. And that detail is just a little knockout along the stem of the leaf. And so I'm going to go in on Illustrator and just add a little bit of that knockout there. So we're going to zoom in, Alt scroll, and open up our pen tool. And we're going to change the color of the next layer just so that there's some contrast that we can see. So I'm going to, I don't know if this is going to look good or not, but I'm going to actually kind of create this stem partway, or the stem flourishment partway through the stem here. And I'm just going to start doing singular line. If you don't feel comfortable just kind of making up where the stem goes, you could also use the actual image. And then I'm going to go in and just kind of switch this quick. Should have locked. Sweet, okay. So I should have locked this, and there we can see the line that I was making. Going to go into the properties and give it a white stroke so I can actually see what I'm working with. And I'm noticing too that it was created below this leaf icon. So I'm going to right click, arrange, and bring to front. Wait, let's see. Ah, there we go. I was working on the wrong layer. There we go. Okay. Just gonna remove the fill. Move this up a little bit. And then gonna go back. And we're just going to adjust some of the anchor points. Another way, if you want to kind of make your anchor points curved, and you don't need to feel like you need to be as specific about how much curve there is. You can go to the selection tool and click on your anchors, and you'll see like this little circle down here. You can just click and drag it, and it'll actually round out your corners for you. which is another useful tool. Sweet. So unlike the icon, this line is this is a line and not a full shape. And I did that on purpose, and that's because I want to use the profile tool. So let's see. So in stroke, if you select the stroke, you can see this profile down here. Right now our stroke is uniform, so it's the same line weight all throughout the entire line, but we can just give it a little bit of taper. We can see how that looks. That looks okay, but I feel like the other icons were a little bit thicker. So I'm gonna select the line, and I'm gonna press let's see, double check, shift or press Control W. Oh, Shift W. And that allows me to kind of select parts of the line and then change the width of that line. And so by doing that, we have just a little bit more control over how our icon can look. So that for this last little bit, I'm gonna zoom in. This one is a little tricky for me. I think I'm gonna adjust this a little bit, and then I'm going to go to click A for the selection tool and just like, I think move this off to the side a little bit. Control Z for mistakes. There we go. Sweet. So we're almost there. The last thing that we're gonna do is, as I was saying before, icons are really nice when they're fully transparent. And I can kind of show you real quick that this one isn't, just by creating a rectangle, and we can change the color of that rectangle. And if we put that oak leaf over it, you can see that white line there. And so what we want to do is make this white line into a knockout on the leaf so that that white line is actually transparent. And so how we'll do that is there's kind of two different ways. One way is a lot faster, but I have found that I actually use the less fast way because there's a little bit more control. So one way you can do this is first you have to select your line, go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke, and so that changes your stroke into a shape. And you can always test that out. If you look here now, that white has become a fill instead of a stroke. We can invert that fill and stroke, and now you can see what that outline stroke did. It made this into a shape. Switch it around again. So let's see. One way of knocking out that white line is by going to Properties, and I believe it's this one. Let's try it. Yep. So let's see, let's go back. So this is the Pathfinder tool, and it allows you to unite, subtract, shape intersects, and we're using this here, which is the minus front. So that white line or white shape now is in front of the black. So when we press that, and we can just move this up for a second, you can see it makes that white line transparent. If you're working with, and so I'm pressing Control Z just to go back to where we started, just to show you the other way. So if we were working with more of a complex shape, another way to do this is by pressing Shift M, which opens up the Shape Builder tool. And first we actually have to click A for the selection tool, select our shapes, make sure all the shapes are selected. We're going to go back to the Shape Builder tool, which is Shift M. And all you do is you click and drag, and you can see that the red outline is showing you the shape that is now being created. So we're going to make that shape. We're going to just make that rectangle again. And send it to the back. So that white line is still there. But if we start to go in and delete our pieces, that gets removed. And then we have that icon with the knockout in it. So going to, we want to unlock everything on spread, Control Alt 2. Select this hotkey here and hotkey cheat sheet and hide it by doing Control 3. And then File, Export. This one we can just call, it has little flourishment. Oop, I forgot one part. Let's try again. File, Export. Use artboard. Medium, transparent. Another way that we can place things in InDesign is, so we're going to now go to InDesign, so that exported to our folder. We want to break that template, so we can select this frame here. I believe what we can do now is go to Bridge. You can see what Bridge does really nicely is it shows you when your icons are have a transparent background. We're just going to click, drag, and drop that in to our frame. And it's dropped in exactly the same place as the previous icon because they're the same height and width, and the leaf was placed in the same spot in the artboard. So before we can submit this assignment, we have to go to our layer or go to our pages, and go to our B parent template. There's a chance that and then and then you can go. I can see that I have my layers are kind of overlapping. So here in this layers panel, you can see there's my name, which is in this bottom corner here, the rectangle, which is our frame, and then the week 2 cheat sheet. We can move these around and rearrange the order that they are occurring. But really what I wanted to do is just toggle the visibility of that cheat sheet so we don't have to worry about that. But I'm going to leave it there just in case in future assignments that becomes useful. So we just jump back. We can just double check. We have everything. Awesome. So what we should have done was save in the beginning. I've made that mistake way too many times. I should have learned by now. Press Control E for export. Week 2. correct naming convention, and save it. We won't be messing with any of these settings here. It should be pretty good. I think one setting that can be adjusted a lot is the compression, but as of right now, we should not have to adjust it at all. We'll click export. There's some color changes because Illustrator was working in CMYK, and that's okay. Sweet, and that's exported. We can save as, go to our folder, assignment template. And then just because I forgot to save this in the beginning, let's see, Control Shift S, save a copy. And we'll save a copy, or we'll save this one as save. So now we have the template. Let's see, go to bridge. Let's see. So we have our template here, our assignment template, and then we have our assignment 2 ready to be submitted on Canvas. And finally, we can just go to where we exported our PDF, open that up, and if we're using Adobe Bridge, it'll automatically use Adobe Acrobat. And you can see our assignment. Awesome. Just going to